Our story starts not with a crime, but with a very ordinary beginning, a teenage romance. It's the summer of 1986 in Fort Wayne, Indiana. A shy young man named Mark Gerardo sees a girl named Janaire Cox. He's immediately struck by her beautiful blue eyes and her big, confident smile. He says it took his breath away. He was smitten right from the start. But Mark was extremely shy, so nothing happened then and there. A few years later, around 1990, when they bump into each other a second time, Mark finds out Janaire is working at a nearby mall and he starts going there to see her. She's the one who asks him when he's finally going to take her out on a proper date. Mark was drawn to that confidence in her. It was the complete opposite of his own reserved nature. Their relationship grew from there, a young couple building a life together. After dating for a few years, they decided to get married. On October 23, 1993, Mark Gerardo, then 25 years old, and Janaire Cox, then 23, exchanged vows. It was the day they believed they had found their person, the one they would share the rest of their lives with. For many years, that's exactly what they did. Their marriage was strong and steady. They built a home and a partnership. The troubles began much later, over a decade into their marriage, when the financial crisis of 2008 hit. The financial strain was immense. Money became their main source of stress and the topic of most of their arguments. Mark indicated these arguments with Janaire could be what he called epic. He said she always won because, in his words, she was going to have the last word. This dynamic, a shift from the young love of Fort Wayne, started to define a different phase of their relationship, one where pressures from the outside world began to test the foundation they had built in their youth. The strain of the financial crisis lingered, and by 2011, Mark and Janaire were ready for a significant change. Seeking a fresh start and new opportunities, they made a major move in November of that year, relocating from the Midwest to Greenville, South Carolina. This wasn't just a change of address. They each secured new jobs in the marketing field, reigniting their professional lives. For a time, this move seemed to successfully renew their bond. Mark specifically recalled that they connected deeply over the natural beauty of their new state. They spent time hiking together in the scenic Appalachian foothills and exploring the coastline, using these shared experiences to rebuild their connection. For several years, this period represented a high point in their marriage. However, this stability would eventually face another severe test. In 2017, Janaire lost her marketing job. The job market proved difficult, and she struggled to secure a new position. This professional setback had a profound personal impact. The confident, direct woman Mark had met decades earlier began to fade. Her confidence suffered significantly. Mark observed that she was becoming, in his words, a shadow of the person she used to be. Faced with this struggle, the couple made a discussion and made another consequential decision to make another fresh start somewhere else. This time, they set their sights on Delaware. They decided Delaware would be their new home, hoping a new environment would offer Janaire a better job market and a chance to regain her footing. This decision set in motion a chain of events that would permanently alter all of their lives. It was this move that led Mark to begin his job hunt in the new region, a search that would introduce a new and pivotal person into their long-shared story. With the decision made to relocate to Delaware, Mark Gerardo began his job search in earnest. During this process, he discovered that the University of Delaware was hiring for a key position, creative director for its marketing department. The role was a significant opportunity. If hired, he would ultimately be responsible for supervising the creative output of the department. Mark applied and sent a follow-up email. The response was immediate. He was contacted by Meredith Chapman, the 32-year-old senior director for marketing at the university. She would be his direct supervisor if he were offered the position, placing her in a position of authority. Meredith Chapman, born Meredith Sullivan on January 31, 1985, was a standout professional. Despite her relatively young age, she had built an impressive and dynamic career. She grew up in Pennsylvania and was a proud alumna of the University of Delaware, holding both a bachelor's degree in communication and a master's degree in education. Her energy extended beyond the office. She had been a cheerleader at UD and later coached cheerleading at several local high schools. Her career began in journalism, working as a reporter and producer for WHYY-TV. She also spent 2 impactful years as a communications manager for then U.S. Representative Mike Castle, who later credited her as a major reason for his successful election, citing her fresh ideas and deep love for Delaware. On a personal level, Meredith was married to Luke, a former Newark City councilman. The couple had married in 2009 and lived in the Fairfield Crest neighborhood with their dog, Indy. Meredith was also politically ambitious, having run for the Delaware State Senate in 2016. Though she lost, those who knew her said she accepted the defeat with grace, viewing it as a teaching moment about taking risks. Colleagues and friends consistently described her as a person of boundless energy and motivation, someone who could accomplish more in a single day than most could in a full week. This was the woman who now invited Mark in for an interview. Mark Gerardot arrived for his interview at the University of Delaware, sitting across the desk from Meredith Chapman. He was immediately and powerfully affected. He later recounted that it was not only her evident professional competence that struck him, but a combination of her presence, intellect, and passion. He said, "When I sat across the desk from her, within 5 minutes, I didn't say it out loud, but I said, I've got to work for this person." He was, in his own words, dumbfounded. Meredith, for her part, must have been equally impressed with Mark's experience and vision because she offered him the creative director position. Mark quickly accepted. In November of 2017, he relocated alone to Wilmington, Delaware to begin his new role. Jennair remained back in South Carolina, tasked with the difficult job of tying up all the loose ends of their lives there. This included arranging for their home to be rented out, a process that would take several weeks. Consequently, Mark spent his first 45 days in Delaware living by himself, physically separated from his wife of 24 years. During this period of solitary transition, his professional relationship with Meredith Chapman evolved rapidly into a close, personal friendship. Unburdened by the routines of his married life and in a new environment, Mark found himself spending more and more time with his new boss. Despite their 15-year age difference, they discovered they had a great deal in common, both professionally and personally. The line between work and private life began to blur. One day, Meredith asked him out for a casual after-work drink. This simple invitation marked a significant turning point. As they sat together at a bar, Mark found Meredith remarkably easy to talk to. In this comfortable, non-judgmental space, he opened up about deeply personal subjects. He spoke about the profound grief of losing both of his parents and his brother, and then he began to speak about his marriage to Jennair. He confided in Meredith about the ongoing issues and persistent tensions within their long-term relationship. Not long after this initial drink, they met for a dinner. It was during this meal that Mark continued to unload his marital struggles, providing more detail and context. He was particularly taken by the fact that Meredith frequently paid him sincere compliments. She told him how skilled he was at his job, what a wonderful and thoughtful man he was. This positive reinforcement was something he felt he had not received from Jennair in a long time, and he was acutely responsive to the attention. 4 weeks after their first meeting at the job interview, the connection between Mark and Meredith escalated. They shared their first kiss. Mark described feeling a surge of excitement in that moment, but it was instantly followed by a crushing wave of guilt. He claims he verbally pulled back, telling Meredith that whatever was starting between them could not continue. He stated that he cared for his wife and was committed to his marriage. However, this stated commitment existed in direct conflict with the powerful and unfamiliar feelings Meredith had awakened in him. Meredith, for her part, had also opened up, revealing that of the 9 years she had been married to Luke, the last 3 had felt like merely going through the motions, a marriage that existed in name only, a performance for the outside world. This mutual confession of unhappiness created a powerful bond. Despite his words of caution to Meredith, Mark was internally driven to explore the feelings she stirred in him. He said he felt confused by these new emotions, which were both unexpected and disturbingly addictive. He began to rationalize that meeting Meredith had revealed a stark truth to him, that life and love could be dramatically different. It could be filled with admiration, verbal affirmation, and shared passion. This realization made the prospect of his existing marriage seem even more stagnant by comparison. Their relationship intensified quickly through texts, calls, and secret meetings. Before Jennair had even completed the move from South Carolina to Delaware, Mark and Meredith had already exchanged declarations of love for one another.
Around the same turbulent time, Mark had also been offered a separate job interview for a position in Colorado. He flew to Denver to explore this potential alternative path. However, during that interview, he experienced a moment of clarity, or perhaps fixation. He felt something internally click, but not in favor of the Colorado job. Instead, he realized he did not want that position at all. His desire was to remain in Delaware and see through the intense relationship that had begun with Meredith. His mind was made up. From the airport in Denver, he sent Meredith a definitive text message. The message contained just 3 words: "I'm all in." This digital pledge represented a conscious, though secret, turning point. At the time he sent this message, Mark Gerardot was 49 years old and had been legally and publicly married to Jennair Cox for 24 years. His private commitment, however, had just been decisively redirected toward a future he was building with Meredith, a future that required the deliberate dismantling of the life he had known for nearly a quarter of a century. In December of 2017, Jennair Gerardot, now 47 years old, finally completed the move to Delaware and reunited with Mark in their new apartment. The separation and stress of the move had been significant, but Jennair arrived hopeful for their fresh start. Almost immediately, however, she sensed that something fundamental was wrong. An intuitive and palpable distance had grown between them. Mark was physically present but emotionally absent, preoccupied and detached. It didn't take long for Jennair's concern to crystallize into a specific suspicion. She confronted Mark directly, voicing her fear that he was involved with another woman. Her questioning was not general, it was precise. She had noticed how frequently and glowingly he mentioned his new boss's name in conversations about his job. Jennair specifically asked Mark if he was having an affair with Meredith Chapman. Faced with this direct accusation, Mark denied it. He continued to deny the affair even as Jennair's steadfast certainty grew. Her intuition, sharpened by years of knowing him, told him his denials were false. With her suspicions now fully activated, Jennair began to quietly observe Mark with a new, forensic intensity. She watched his behaviors, his phone habits, his patterns. Mark, in turn, began to notice something unsettling. His wife seemed to possess specific pieces of information about his interactions and communications with Meredith, details she would have no ordinary way of knowing. This unnerving realization came to a head around Valentine's Day of 2018. During a tense conversation, Jennair finally revealed the source of her knowledge. She admitted to Mark that she had hired a professional service that allowed her to gain complete clandestine access to his smartphone. This software gave her a real-time window into his digital life. She could read every text message exchanged with Meredith, see every photograph sent or received, and view a log of every call. She had been silently monitoring his betrayal for weeks. Confronted with this irrefutable digital evidence, Mark's wall of denials collapsed. He finally admitted the truth to his wife. He had, in fact, fallen in love with Meredith Chapman. Jennair was devastated by the confirmation of her worst fears. The foundation of her life, the marriage she had fought for and built upon for 24 years, had been shattered by his confession. Yet, even in her profound hurt, a part of her remained fiercely committed to their union. She insisted that they begin marriage counseling, believing that with professional help, they could work through the infidelity and repair the damage. She immediately asked Mark to attend therapy sessions with her, clinging to the hope that the life they had built together was not beyond salvation.
Mark agreed to attend marriage counseling with Jennair, a decision born more out of obligation and guilt than a genuine belief in reconciliation. However, the therapy sessions became just another arena for Jennair's escalating surveillance. On the day of their second counseling appointment, as Mark was putting on his jacket to leave, he felt an unusual, hard object sewn into the inner lining. His first thought was that it was a forgotten anti-theft security tag from a store, but his curiosity, and likely a dawning suspicion, prompted him to investigate further. He cut open the lining of his jacket and discovered a small, sophisticated digital recording device hidden inside. Mark was furious. He immediately confronted Jennair about the bug. Her explanation was chilling in its calm. She stated she had planted the device because she needed to know the full, unvarnished extent of his relationship with Meredith. She wanted to overhear any private conversations he might have, any future plans they were making together that he wouldn't reveal to her in therapy.
Furthermore, she calmly informed him that her actions extended beyond mere eavesdropping. She revealed she had already taken proactive steps to expose the affair, having contacted both the University of Delaware's Human Resources Department and Meredith Chapman's husband, Luke, to inform them of the relationship. For Mark, this was the final breach of any remaining trust or possibility of repair. The discovery of the recording device and Jenner's admissions stripped away the last pretense of working on their marriage. What little remained of their relationship crumbled completely in that moment. Shortly after this incident, Mark delivered his final decision to Jenner. He told her he would be filing for divorce. He explained he had to wait until May to meet Delaware's mandatory 6-month residency requirement, but as soon as that date arrived, he would formally begin the process and move out of their shared apartment. His mind was made up, and his path was now explicitly set toward a future with Meredith. During the same period, Meredith's life was also accelerating on a new trajectory, one that seemed to mirror Mark's desired fresh start. Professionally, she was soaring. She was offered and accepted a prestigious promotion as the Assistant Vice President for Marketing and Creative Services at Villanova University in her home state of Pennsylvania. Personally, she had initiated divorce proceedings from her husband, Luke, in order to freely pursue a relationship with Mark. She was in the process of relocating to a new home in Radnor Township, Pennsylvania. In a coordinated move, Mark left his job at the University of Delaware in early April of 2018 and began searching for his own new place to live, solidifying the physical and legal separation from Jenner and aligning his life with Meredith's. As Mark and Meredith's relationship moved forward with a sense of inevitability, Jenner Jerideau was spiraling into a profound crisis. She began meeting with a divorce coach named Sheila Brennan, a professional who helps clients navigate the emotional and logistical terrain of marital dissolution. In these sessions, Jenner poured out her anguish. She spoke of the consuming anger and deep-seated resentment she felt at being, in her own words, tossed away and traded in for a younger, more successful woman. Sheila Brennan later indicated that Jenner's fears were not solely emotional, they were intensely practical. Jenner was terrified of being left financially devastated. She had not been able to secure a new job since relocating to Delaware, marking a full year of unemployment since losing her marketing position in South Carolina. This financial vulnerability, coupled with the emotional betrayal, created a cooker-pusher of stress that began to catastrophically impact her mental health. Mark observed Jenner beginning to act in increasingly erratic and alarming ways. He claimed that during one particularly desperate confrontation, she even threatened to jump out of a window. Recognizing the severity of her distress, Mark encouraged, some might say urged, Jenner to seek professional psychiatric help and to lean on her family and friends for support. For a period, it appeared she took this advice. She began seeing a therapist and seemed outwardly to be moving toward a fragile acceptance of the impending divorce. Mark formed the impression that she was acting completely normal, an assessment that would later prove to be a tragic miscalculation. In the weeks just before Mark was scheduled to move out, Jenner approached him with a typewritten list of requests. To Mark, this list seemed like a rational, if somewhat odd, roadmap for an amicable separation. It included items like going on final hikes together, having a few last dinners, and spending structured closure time as a couple before he left. Mark interpreted this as a sign that they had gotten through the worst, and that Jenner was finally coping in a healthier way. His priority was to land this thing, to ensure she was in a stable enough place for him to leave without further drama. He agreed to her requests, believing he was compassionately helping her gain closure. He was utterly unaware that Jenner was desperately clinging to a different hope entirely, the fantasy that this time together would rekindle his love, and he would ultimately choose to stay.
The final act began on the night of Monday, April 23, 2018. As part of the agreed-upon list of requests, Mark and Jenner had made plans to meet for dinner. Mark arrived at the restaurant and waited. He received a series of text messages from Jenner explaining she was running late, that she had made a wrong turn. She then sent another message telling him he should just go home because she wasn't going to make it in time. Only minutes later, as Mark was preparing to leave the restaurant, a new text arrived. This one contained a photograph. It showed an emptied white kitchen trash bag, and in the center of it was a used condom. This was followed immediately by another text from Jenner that read, "You ruined my life."
In that horrific moment, the mundane excuse about a wrong turn evaporated. Mark realized with dawning terror exactly where his wife was. She was not lost. She was 30 miles away in Radnor Township, Pennsylvania, sifting through the outdoor trash can at the house Meredith Chapman had moved into just 1 week earlier. 2 more texts flashed on his screen in quick succession. "I hope you never find happiness." And the final text read, "Bye, Mark." Panic seized him. He began frantically calling and texting Meredith Chapman, his mind racing with fear about what his wife, in this state, was capable of doing. Every call went straight to voicemail. Every text went unanswered. He rushed out of the restaurant and drove toward Meredith's new home, fearing he would find the 2 women in a heated confrontation. He could not have imagined the absolute stillness he was about to encounter. When he arrived and entered the house, he found Meredith lying face down and lifeless on her kitchen floor, a pool of blood forming around her head from a single gunshot wound. Nearby, he found his wife, Jennair, in a similar state, also on the floor. A neighbor, Tim Mulvey, was already at the scene, having heard the sharp, unmistakable sounds that prompted him to investigate. Mark, in shock, told him to call 911. When Police Chief Christopher Flanagan arrived, he found Mark standing on the driveway, hyperventilating. He was placed in an ambulance for evaluation before being taken to the police station for questioning. Investigators quickly located the weapon, a Taurus Tracker .357 revolver under Jennair's body, with 2 of its 7 rounds fired. The forensic timeline showed Jennair had broken into the home earlier that afternoon, cleaned up the broken glass from a basement window to disguise the break-in, and then lay in wait. When Meredith arrived home around 7 p.m., walking into her own kitchen, Jennair shot her in the head at close range before turning the gun on herself. A discarded bag at the scene contained a wig and clothing that did not belong to Meredith. In the immediate hours and days after the murder-suicide, the police investigation rapidly filled in the details of Jennair Gerardo's meticulous final day. The following day, authorities received a crucial tip. A neighbor had seen a woman wearing a wig, a trench coat, a hat, and sunglasses, using binoculars to watch Meredith Chapman's house in the days prior. The car keys found at the scene led them to a Cadillac Jennair had rented on April 13th. Inside that rental car, parked on a side street, police found a cache of items: binoculars, additional ammunition, rubber gloves, and earplugs. A gas receipt inside placed her in the area of Meredith's house as early as 2:40 p.m. on the day of the killings. As Mark reels from the grief and shock, he began the grim task of sorting through Jennair's affairs. What he uncovered was evidence of a profound double life that had begun the moment he confessed the affair on Valentine's Day. He found secret bank accounts and credit cards she had opened. He combed through her computer and phone records, piecing together a campaign of surveillance that was far more extensive than the single recording device he had found. He discovered receipts for audio surveillance equipment, a lock-picking kit, computer hacking software, and DNA testing kits she had used to check his clothing. He found the record for the purchase of the high-end GPS tracking system. He learned she had physically attached one unit to his car, naming it Mark Liar Jerk in the app, and another to Meredith's car. He recovered over 400 screenshots of private conversations he and Meredith had on text and Snapchat. He realized she had gained access to his phone in the middle of the night, likely by using his thumb on the fingerprint reader as he slept. He found the receipt for the Taurus .357, purchased on March 20th, 2018, and the credit card statements showing 3 separate visits to a shooting range for practice, visits that coincided with times she was ostensibly discussing their marriage with him. The audio device in his jacket had not been an isolated incident. He located digital files containing hundreds of hours of audio recordings, which Jennair had not only made, but had meticulously transcribed into 12 bound notebooks. In one chilling recorded conversation, Jennair's voice could be heard telling him, "She's living my fucking life." He discovered she had cycled multiple devices in and out of his clothing for weeks. It also came to light that just before the murders, Jennair had emailed a 15-page letter to family members. She had started it weeks earlier, dating each entry. In it, she wrote that her motive was simply payback. That's as simple as it gets. The letter contained a threat that if Mark had walked into the house that night, she would have killed him too. Looking back, Mark Gerardo has reflected with immense guilt, stating he wishes he had handled everything differently, that he broke Jenaire's heart, and in her mind, she saw no other escape. He has said he still loves her. He wrote a book titled Irreparable, pledging royalties to suicide prevention organizations. Meredith Chapman's sudden death left a gaping hole in her community. Friends, family, and colleagues universally remembered the 33-year-old not as a victim in a crime, but as a vivacious, compassionate, and fiercely talented woman, a person whose life was defined by love, energy, and achievement, and whose tragic end serves as a somber reminder of the catastrophic consequences of betrayal and unchecked obsession. With that, we have come to the end of today's episode. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like, and kindly subscribe to the channel if you enjoy contents like this. Stay well and stay safe. I will catch you guys on our next episode.